Hello again. In this podcast, I wanted to talk about zebras because they are one of those iconic species that if someone mentions Africa to you, they're probably one of the first animals you'll think about. Or if you're planning to go to Africa, it's one of those animals that you'll expect to see. And one of the things that really surprised me, this was a few years ago now, but it was when I discovered that zebras are actually endangered. So there's certainly a good chance that some species at least will be gone within a few decades, which is obviously, I think, a very sad thing. So I wanted to talk about them and just really give you some facts, some background to these animals so that you understand perhaps a little bit more about them. So first of all, there are 3 species of zebra, and there are subspecies of some of these at least. And so the names that I mention may not be names that you know. So if you know other names like Burchell's, for example, that's a subspecies of the plain zebra. So let's start with the plain zebra. And in fact, with these species, it's fairly easy to differentiate one from another. So with the plain zebra, that's probably the zebra that you're most likely to think about when you think of a zebra. So they are the most common zebra. And the way to spot them is that they have very broad stripes all over their body. And you might also see these brown stripes. They're ghost stripes between the black stripes. So that is a plain zebra. Now, you'll tend to find them in grassland and woodland, and they are in southern and eastern Africa. So that's where you'll find zebra. In terms of population, they are declining. So it's estimated, at least the latest information I could find. So you might find something that's more up to date if you go and have a look. But there's in the region of 150,000 to 250,000 adults in the wild. So normally, certainly when you're looking at conservation and whether an animal is threatened or not, the count tends to be mature adults rather than young. And I'm going to talk more about the young a bit later. So the plain zebra is the one that you're most likely to think about when you think of a zebra. Now, the second species is the Grevy zebra. Might have pronounced that wrong. Grevy was a French explorer, I think, or possibly a French prime minister, actually, thinking about it, or president. So that's where the name comes from anyway. So there'll be a French accent to that name. Now, these zebra are easy to spot because they have stripes, but the black and white stripes are much thinner and they are consistent all the way across their body. So both at the front and the back of the animal. So that's the Grevy zebra. Now, these are endangered. I don't have a number for them at the moment, but they are listed as endangered. And they are found in dry areas, so semi-desert in Kenya, also in Ethiopia. That's where you're likely to find the Grevy zebra. And then the final animal is the mountain zebra. And you can differentiate them because they have thin stripes at the front of their body, so on the front quarters and their head, but they have broader stripes on the hind quarters, so to the back of the animal. And they are listed as vulnerable. They mountain gorillas. They're found in hilly areas and mountain areas in Namibia, Angola, and South Africa. And again, for the numbers that I found for them, there's estimated to be less than 35,000 animals. So that's not a lot of animals. And if you start thinking about what's a healthy number to have to maintain a gene pool, and this is over their range, this is total. So you're going to find subgroups that are much smaller groups of animals, and they would tend to be the breeding populations. So this is where you start to get into or have that danger of inbreeding, and then you get all sorts of problems relating from that. Okay, so just picking a few, aspects of these animals at random. They tend to live for about 25 years. Their gestation period is typically 12 to 13 months, so it's quite a long gestation period. Young animals can run within an hour of being born, so obviously that contributes to them surviving as young animals, but nonetheless, it's estimated that something in the region of 50% of young animals and foals are killed by predators. So that is quite a heavy loss of young animals. So and couple that with a long gestation period, and also zebra rarely have more than one animal at birth, so one foal. So twins are extremely rare. So this does contribute to them having a fairly slow recovery if they start losing numbers due to other factors, and the current factors, in addition to just natural predation, are things like loss of habitat and climate, which can be contributed to by climate change, human activity, all that sort of stuff. I guess the usual suspects, unfortunately, these days, which tends to be us to a large degree. So that's kind of the state of the population. And the fact is that many of the zebra populations now are there because they're in protected areas. And that's to protect them from poaching, that sort of thing, illegal trafficking of the animals, more likely the animal's skin and other parts. So this is all contributing to them being as vulnerable to extinction as they currently are. So that's obviously very, very disappointing, but it is unfortunately the state of things. Now, they can live for up to about 25 years, might have mentioned that. Top speed, they can actually run pretty fast, up to 65 kilometers an hour. And so they're closely related to horses, so that does give them that advantage with speed. But they are not very tame, so you can't tame zebras. They are naturally wild. They can be quite aggressive, and not only fighting each other, but they do often herd with other animals, such as wildebeest. And I was watching a video a few days ago of a wildebeest calf, quite a young animal, actually being attacked by zebra, and the mother and another wildebeest getting between this young wildebeest and the zebra. So they can be quite aggressive, and that does help them when they're attacked by predators, because they'll tend to group together and protect each other. And they do have quite sharp incisors at the front of their mouth. So the predators that they most commonly will be attacked by a lion. So lions will attack adult animals. There's also leopards, hyena, cheetah will attack them, but they obviously, from the number of young animals that get lost, that it's mostly the young that are taken by predators, and that's because obviously predators will go for the easy option, because from a predator's perspective, if they are injured when they hunt, that can impact their ability to hunt. And if they're in a species that is very solitary, or if it's a solitary predator, that basically can result in them being unable to hunt and then dying. And the other predator they have is the Nile crocodile. They're more opportunistic. That tends to happen when the zebra are migrating, and they will cover quite a large area. There was the longest known migration, I guess, of zebra is about 150. I think it's 150k actually, 150 kilometers from. That was from Namibia into Botswana, and I assume these were tagged animals, or they were able to just monitor individual animals. Yeah, that was Namibia to Botswana. So, and they also travel with wildebeest and other grazing animals on the migration. So you may be aware of the great wildebeest migration that happens, huge number of animals that. And I believe that's clockwise direction from Tanzania through to Kenya. So that's the Serengeti through to the Masai Mara parks. And obviously on that migration, they're crossing rivers. And where there's a lot of animals crossing, you'll get these groups of Nile crocodile will be there and basically take anything that's going through the water that they can. And if one gets a grip on an animal, normally the others will then move in, and that animal basically doesn't last very long, unfortunately. I'm going to talk about the stripes. I've already mentioned them in terms of differentiating the main species of zebra, the three main species, and they do have distinctive patterns of stripes. Now, the thing about zebra is their skin is actually black, so it's white stripes on a black animal, basically. The first thing is, what's the purpose of the stripes? Well, we're not 100% sure, but there are really 4 different functions they appear to serve. So the most obvious one is camouflage. If you're in long grass, anything that breaks up your shape, even this sort of dazzle camouflage that's been used by the military in the past, is a good way of making you less visible to a predator, bearing in mind that not all animals have color vision, so they're looking more, if you go certainly to black and white, you're then looking at shapes and textures, and something like a dazzle to our color vision, which might make them look quite, in some ways, quite obvious, is actually very effective for a predator that doesn't see so well in color. So camouflage is definitely thought to be one reason they've evolved these stripes. Another interesting one is that it does appear to reduce the number of biting insects that they have to deal with. And there was a comparison made between a zebra and a horse, and it was observed that the horse suffered a lot more from biting animals than the zebra does. So while that's not fully understood, it does appear to be an advantage that they have with having the stripes. Another contribution the stripes may make is to the animal's body heat, regulating their body heat. So, and I think this was an American study. It was noted that the white stripes were 18 degrees cooler than the black. So I'm assuming that's Fahrenheit. Seems a bit big for a centigrade gap, but just another observation. And then the final one is it's potentially social, because each stripe pattern on an individual animal is like our fingerprint. So each one is unique, and presumably that would contribute to zebra being able to differentiate one animal from another. I mean, I guess it would be easier for them. They would do it in other ways that perhaps are less obvious to us, but that is another contribution of the stripes. Now, in terms of the groupings, zebra they have generally small groups, which is known as a harem, which tends to be up to 6 animals with a single male that will be a mate. So that male will mate with the females, and there may also be young. So it'd be a family group. That kind of group is thought of as a family group. The small group is also known as a dazzle in some quarters. They will congregate into herds, and those herds will sometimes combine into super herds, and this is the sort of super herds that will combine with antelope and wildebeest in these big migrations. So there you're talking about thousands of animals. Now, the zebras become mature or sexually mature between 1 to 5 years. I think that's the females, and then up to 5 years for a male. And in common with other animals, so things like elephants, other mammal groups, once a male reaches sexual maturity, it will leave the family group and often join up and form a bachelor herd. So things like impala also do this. The bachelor herds or the bachelor groups tend to number up to about 15 animals, and they'll stick together until they are mature enough to start competing for females, maybe in these smaller harem groups, just challenge the dominant male. So that's generally how they live. And the purpose of the herd, though, is to protect them, so that if they are attacked by a predator, they will tend to group together and defend one another and attack predators. So with those teeth, they'll bite them, they'll also kick them. So zebra are not an easy target for predators because they do stand their ground, they do fight back. So that makes them quite hazardous for other animals. In terms of the noises they make, so you can, I was going to look at just seeing if I could use a recording, but I'm always never sure of the copyright rules, so decided not to. But you can Google different zebra noises, and they've been described as sounding like a yappy dog, a squealing pig, a snorting horse, a braying donkey, or even growling cat. So they have a variety of different noises, some of which are definitely warning noises. So I've spoken before about how you find predators, and one of the ways is to listen for a prey animal making an alarm noise. So if you know what those noises are, they tend to be very distinctive, then you know that that animal has detected a predator somewhere nearby. So the predators, obviously by their nature, will tend to be very quiet and will try and get close to their prey without being seen and without being detected. So that also makes them difficult for you to spot if you're going to try and photograph them or just see them. But the prey animals, obviously, it's in their very best interest to be able to detect animals, predators, either by smell or by if they're downwind of the predator, which usually they're not. Predators will tend to be downwind of the herd, so that the wind is blowing their scent away from the prey they're going for. However, if a prey animal does hear them, those alarm calls are very useful. So others seem to be just more sort of social noises. Some of them will be threats because they do fight a bit. It might be around sexual awareness, and sexual availability. So there's a whole kind of vocabulary of sound that they use to communicate with each other. There's also non-verbal. There are also facial expressions. So the ears, for example, will tend to come forward when they're threatened. They might be upright to greet. There's also the way they widen their eyes. In fact, on the facial expression, so there are several situations that have been observed. So they can reflect either a friendly or a curious intention, maybe when two animals are meeting. Again, sexual receptivity is another one. Submission is definitely an expression. And then aggression is another one. They've also been observed doing lip clapping and yawning, and that's still not understood exactly what that means. I mean, I say exactly, we're always guessing a little bit, but by observing the expression and then what behaviors and the context of that expression, you can begin to make some guesses, educated guesses about the purpose of those expressions. Now, zebra tend to be active during the daylight. They'll congregate at night. They generally sleep on their side, but they are capable of sleeping standing up because that will give them an advantage if a predator does attack during the night. So lion tend to be active during the night. In terms of grazing, most of their diet is grass, but they will, which is up to 50 different species of grass they'll eat. If things are hard and there's drought, they will eat other things as well, so shrubs and bark and that kind of thing. Their digestive system is interesting. So they have an area of their digestive system attached to the intestines, which does a lot of the digestion. Now, and here I'm a bit light on the detail, so I apologize for that. But basically, zebras they're not as effective at digesting grasses as other animals are, but they do eat a lot of grass. So basically, they tend to go for quantity over quality. They don't fully digest it all, but they do have a huge volume of grass and vegetation that they eat. So it does mean that they're obviously it allows them to keep them alive. And also, anecdotally, something I heard, which I've not been able to verify, but zebra often look quite fat. And that's simply because they have a lot of gas in their gut as they're digesting. So often when you're digesting something that you're not digesting well, there'll tend to be a lot of gas there. So zebras generally look quite round, but some of that at least is gas from their digestive process. So that really covers, I think, most of what I wanted to talk about with zebra. Hopefully there's some things in there that you didn't know. The only other thing, I was just looking at my notes here. So they will swim, although they're not natural swimmers. So they'll tend to do it when they have to. But they're much happier in shallow water. Obviously, river crossings, things like that. They have to be able to swim to do that. So that's pretty much it. So there are some zebra photographs in the collections if you're interested in looking at those, or if you like zebra photographs. There is one which, if it's not, as I record this, is not currently available, but will be very shortly, which is a picture I took of a solitary zebra in the bush in Zimbabwe, and I like it because it's more of an unusual photograph. It's more of a portrait. There are lots of portraits around, pictures of zebra around with them grazing, because that's mostly what they're doing. But they, again, very interesting animals. So as I say, I hope you found that interesting, and I'll be talking about other animals over the next few weeks. So that's it for this podcast. So bye for now. Oh, and one thing just before you go, please take a look at the 2026 wildlife calendar. That's available now. It's on the website. There's a link below the description of this podcast episode. So please take a look, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye now.